I am, however, starting to favor paladins because basically of the speed, and I'll cover that in the spreadsheet in a little while. But basically, the speed of the paladin allows you to raid the same instance at the same distance more often, which is producing much greater rates of return. So, however, it does cost a lot of gold to build a paladin army, and that does slow city progress. So, I've been slowly building up a pretty solid paladin army that will significantly, is hopefully a good long-term investment. So I'm going to take a second to cover the spreadsheet. This is the spreadsheet I did. I've just been tracking data on dungeons I've done. This isn't all of it, but this is some of the more recent stuff where I've started to dial the numbers in. Without getting too in-depth on the whole spreadsheet and the way it works, the important factors are this is what I sent. I'll do it by column. That's what I sent. That's what I lost. Those are the survivors. That's the percentage of units sent that I lost. You'll notice it's almost never over 5, and properly sized, it's typically in the 1 to 2% range. This is the gold that it produced, the wood, the stone, the iron, and the food. You'll notice that of the total resources in a forest dungeon, 48% is wood, 16% stone. And this breakdown is consistent throughout all forest dungeons. These breakdowns are dependent on dungeon type, so I'll probably end up with numbers for this, but a mountain dungeon, I guess, generally produces more iron, hill food, and wood from forest. Then over here we have the total resources obtained, the resources carried per unit, and this is one of the important numbers we'll be looking at, the number of foes faced, and the number of resources we got per foe. Then I'm also over here kind of analyzing the costs of the raid, and I'm basically saying, okay, if I lost one berserker, that cost me 150 iron. I almost covered my iron loss from my loot. And overall the resources were gained plus the gold. So that's basically what I've been tracking. I've got some pretty good data on it. But the main thing I'm focusing on here are these two columns here, the loot per foe and the loot per unit. Any of these raids that the loot per unit is lower than 10, it basically means that the I sent too many troops, basically. I didn't have the dungeon didn't have enough loot to have every troop carrying a maximum load. At the same time, if I have 25, a lower number here and a 25 over here, that means that I did send enough troops, and that I got every bit out that I possibly could, the full 25 at least at this stage of the dungeon. The perfect raid was one where I got 10 and 25. That means that I, to the number, nailed exactly what it should be. Short of managing your raid queue, it is better to have 10s here and slightly low height, 24, 23 numbers here than vice versa. So anyway, that's the berserker stats. Roughly a paladin. The reason I went with the paladin is because unlike some of the other units, it is exactly twice as many slots. So a paladin is basically the equivalent of 2 berserkers. It carries twice as much as a berserker. It doesn't cost much more than double the cost of a berserker, although gold stings a little bit. And most important, it's a lot faster. So looking at the paladin numbers I've done so far, this isn't all of them, but these are the ones that I've got logged in the sheet. All of the other numbers are the same. The only difference is I'm noticing that they die a heck of a lot less as a percentage of total troops sent. I'm keeping these numbers right at about 1%, so I'm basically losing 1 per 100. And when you calculate their speed, which is the main thing to look at, and I'm going to jump back into game for this part. Let's see, how do I get to game here? Okay, so from my city, this is the most important part, and it's probably going to be my last major point of this video set. From this location, this particular dungeon is exactly 2 hours and 3 minutes for an infantry, but it's only 1:31 for cavalry. Now that's one way, and you got to calculate for round trip. So what this is telling me is that this is a 4-hour round trip time to get. I can send infantry every 4 hours, where I actually get my cavalry back every 3 hours. So there's basically 33% more raiding to be done in a day if I have time to stay on top of it. which I do some days I don't. This one is a full 3 hours away for infantry, so that's 6 hours round trip for infantry, and this is where the cavalry really start to pay off. It's 4 hours round trip for the cavalry, which makes it much more doable from this distance. And another ridiculous extreme, just to kind of come up, my other cities are hitting this this one up here. But if I were to do this from my main city, this would be a roughly a 9-hour round trip by cavalry and a little under 6 hours for the cavalry. This is important, and this is pretty much the crux of why this level of raiding is becoming increasingly important. If I have groups of 120 cavalry, the full raid queue of 5 each, that's a total of 600 cavalry, and I'm sending all 600 cavalry in 5 groups of 120 on cooldown, I'm going to lose about 6, which is 1 per raid, plus an extra somewhere here and there. That's going to cost a certain amount of resource, it's going to cost a certain amount of iron, a certain amount of gold, and that's going to be my net. For 1 round trip, I'm going to make 10,800 in resources and 8,640 in gold. If I do that every 9 hours, that's going to be like a mine producing 1,200 plus 960 in gold per hour, even at a 9-hour round trip. Raiding like this, once you've invested in the troops, is literally like a gold mine producing 1,000 gold an hour. That's a lot. However, this is kind of a luck factor, but depending on your position and where the dungeons pop up and how hard you hit them when they're up and close, if you drop that down to a 6 hours, this is a 3-hour away. If it's a 6-hour round trip, these are your resource and gold per hour rates. If it's a 4-hour trip, and then the golden scenario is this is a 90-minute away dungeon, this is a 3-hour round trip, the full raid queue at level 3 is producing 2,880 gold an hour, plus another 3,600 in mixed resources an hour. So this dungeon right here is going to be producing, this just popped up and I'm so excited because where this was a 4-hour round trip for me, the closer dungeon that just popped became a 3-hour round trip. And it means that once I've got my army built, which I don't quite have yet, I just went from producing 21,060 an hour to 2,880 an hour. Now, this is compelling at level 3. It's something that really starts to take off at level 3. But let's just take a moment to look at level 4, because I think this is just going to become an increasingly important thing to make sure that we're getting lined up to do as the dungeon levels increase. I've been seeing a few level 4 dungeons come up. A level 4 dungeon would require roughly 2,000 cavalry. That is 5 groups of 480. You're going to lose about 24 a cycle, and every cycle is going to produce 43,000 in resources and 30,000 in gold. If that was a level 4 dungeon next to me and I'd built up to my 2,000 paladins, I would be producing 10,000 gold an hour from raiding with 2,000 paladins and 1,440 in, or 14,400 in resources. That's net. That's after the cost of replacing the losses. The only other thing to factor is that running something that's producing that kind of numbers is going to cost me 1,500 in food an hour. So that's something to maybe subtract from these numbers. And back at level 3, by the way, it is costing 375 food an hour. I know it's some pretty heavy math and spreadsheets and whatnot, so I'm mostly, and if you can't afford, if you need your gold to build your cities, and you want to focus on berserkers, the numbers work the same, just send twice as many berserkers. But anyone who's in that 2 to 3 city range, who's not yet fully capitalizing on the dungeons. Dungeons level 1 weren't that big of a deal. 2 is a nice little boost. 3 is becoming important, and by 4 it is going to need to be central. It's going to be a very big part of building this empire. So thanks for watching.